Then John get home and put his board and get the oyster up in the fat. Yes, next thing you know, the man to knock on the door.
Where's the knock for?
Yes, sir. So you just been out in the creek just now? Yes, sir. Just come up the creek, sir.
Yeah.
I tell them, say you take the gullah out of Jaffa and anything, you have a spot of tea.
The language these people are talking is Gullah, which has survived as a distinct variety of English here around the South Carolina islands.
This fella come here and walk up on the bank and say, what are you doing up on that bank there? And he said, don't you notice
It's thought by many people to be the closest we can get to the kind of language that would have been spoken by the slaves in the 18th and early 19th centuries, and that this is the origin of modern Afro-American vernacular.
After John get off about 50 feet off, and John look over there, and he go on his boat, and he look, his boat done sank down. He start hollering, hey, help, help. John said, I ain't rough as yet.
We put together varying African words along with Elizabethan English and came out with something that sounded like a this year when Hona the Yeti we to talk like a this. So sometimes people think maybe it's English, then they go, but not quite. There were Igbos, Mandinkas, Malinkes, Yorubas, Golas, Gidzi, Afik, Mende that were all kidnapped, captured, and then isolated together on these islands during enslavement.
Once the slaves reached the plantations, they lived in cabins like these beside the main house. Here, many words that came into Gullah from African languages have found their way into standard English. Words such as banana, which comes from the Wolof language spoken in Senegal, and voodoo, traceable to an African word for spirit in the language spoken by the Yoruba people. Other African words which have entered standard English include the animals, zebra, gorilla and chimpanzee, the musical terms samba, mambo, banjo and bongo, and the food and plant names guba, meaning peanut, yam and gumbo, meaning okra. African compound words were translated, giving English terms like badmouse, and nitty-gritty originated as a term for the grit that accumulated in the bilges of slave ships. As well as vocabulary, Gullah employs some grammatical features that differ from standard English.
If someone say, "Hana going for do that," I be done do 'em. Okay? So they're asking, are you going to do it? I already did it. And I did it a long time ago, essentially, is what you're saying. I be done do 'em. I done do that. You see? So if you hear somebody say, I done do that, that means they did it and they did it a long time ago. And why are you asking me it? Oh, again, basically. So it's a lot more going into it. So if someone said, well, Hana going over there, Hana done yet, they say you're going over there. I be done yet that. But it done do that too. But I been going there, but they ain't be did it. Why Hana ain't be did it? When I be did it, Hana ain't be did it. You see? So it's like, well, you were going over there. Yeah, I already went there. But when I went, you weren't there. But I was there. But you're right. I wasn't there when you were there.
Phrases like these have a rich and economical expressiveness. In other ways, Gullah and other black Englishes have stripped down their grammar. They drop verbs like is, use don't where standard English says doesn't, and omit the apostrophe and s that standard English uses as a sign of ownership. This kind of simplification is common when languages meet and emerge as a new hybrid. It's exactly what happened when Saxons and Danes dealt with each other in England in the 9th century and changed English grammar forever. But in this case, the changes were mistakenly taken by many white observers as evidence that black speakers just hadn't got the intelligence to speak the language properly, that they were simply trying and failing to copy white speech. In fact, they were adding to the language.
Now listen, yeah, you know, some people say they're your friend and thing, but they ain't always your friend. Like that bird rabbit, that boy know he ain't nothing to him. You hear what I say? That cutter was slow motion, and that bird rabbit just as slick as him want to beat.
But black speakers had their own tradition of performances that showed just how flexible and expressive their language was. They told stories, and they're still told today.
And now Hong Tong come, roof, 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 roof. And oh, I tell you, bird rabbit, he take off and lickety split.
Brer Rabbit is a direct descendant of animal tricksters who feature in African folklore.
I say, Brer Rabbit, you to tell the truth about Cutter? He say, yes, sir, ma'am. I say, you lie, ting, ain't no truth in you. Ain't no truth in you, no way.
But folktales weren't the only thing that fueled dreams of freedom. With English, the slaves had learned Christianity. White society thought it would teach obedience. The Bible became as central to the lives of the slaves as it had been to the first settlers in New England. But the message they found in it wasn't obedience. It was liberty. Once again, the Bible in English became the book of freedom.
Yeah, Jesus calling. Who now want for gold? Yeah, Jesus calling. Whoa, who now want for go. Oh, children, una beg for get ready. Jesus be coming back. Una want for go. Una. Steal away, steal away from Jesus.
By the first decade of the 19th century, the American states in the North had abolished slavery.
Steal away home.
When the blacks of the South sang "Steal Away" or "One More River to Cross" or "Bound for Canaan Land," they were introducing new words and sounds into the language, and they were also singing not just about the next world, but about this one, about the hope of escaping to the north and to freedom. The chains of slavery were rusting, and on the 12th of April 1861, in the early hours of the morning, shots were fired at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbour, just behind me. This was the start of the American Civil War, which the North, of course, was to win. 4 years later, Confederate forces abandoned Charleston. The Union Army marched in unopposed. They freed the slaves.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
The promise in the language of their spirituals had come good for the black people of Charleston.
Oh, glory, glory.
The American Civil War gave us the phrase, "Hold the fort." And the first people to hear anything on the grapevine were in the southern states, where army telegraph lines strung in the trees became so knotted that they were said to look like grapevines.
Oh, you got to ask the Lord's forgiveness.
There was plenty of resistance to the new order. The Ku Klux Klan, who apparently derived their name from the Greek word kuklos, meaning circle, were formed in the aftermath of the war. They gave English the word bulldozer, originally a bull dose, meaning a dose large enough for a bull. It was a dose of whipping, and it was administered to black people, often fatally. Words like bulldoze are a savage reminder that the end of the war didn't bring the end of segregation and prejudice. In theory, blacks and their language were now free to mix with whites, but in practice, it was only in the 20th century that the mixing of vocabularies really began, that, just like in the plantation houses, white speakers started to ape black speech, and cool was born. And that's a story for a later program.